Just be polite is a really, really good rule of thumb, generally in life, also with dumpster diving. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy that you wanted to join me today because today I'm going to take you guys through some of the things that I think you ought to know before you try dumpster diving or before you sort of venture out and see if that's anything for you. I have made 3 videos that is kind of like this vlog format where I show you what I find when I go dumpster diving, what I make with the food that I find, and so on and so forth. But I thought it could be a good idea to also have a video where I'm talking a little bit about the do's and don'ts of picking up food from dumpsters, because there is like a social, like a code of conduct. There is just stuff that you do and stuff that you just don't do, and I really want to make sure that the content that I'm putting out there is inspiring healthy and kind and sustainable habits in people, and not something that's going to be misunderstood or perhaps something that's going to be detrimental or harmful to this sustainability community. I hope that you understand, or you will at least once I get into this. So I've gathered some do's and don'ts, things that I think you should be aware of and think you should do actively, and I think you should refrain from doing when dumpster diving. So that is what I want to get into. I've asked you guys on multiple platforms if there are any questions about dumpster diving, and there were quite a lot. So that's what we're going to get into today. So let's just get started. First of all, before we really get into the things, I really want to explain what dumpster diving is. I try to do that in every single dumpster diving video, so if you already know, relax, it's only 30 seconds. Dumpster diving means that you go to a store after closing hours and you look into their dumpsters or their bins and you see what they throw away. Because the thing is, a lot of the times, perfectly good food and perfectly good things and like goods in general are being thrown away for one reason or another. Everything from convenience to expiration dates, and expiration dates are only, like guidelines, not laws. And a ton of things can be wrong with the product, which makes the store throw it away, like broken packaging, or if it's a set and there only is one of them, then the other one is going to be thrown away, although that one thing was useful. It's not that uncommon here in Denmark, and every time I go out dumpster diving, I always meet other people who are doing it as well, and a lot of people that are on a really tight budget are doing it because you can find really good things and you don't have to pay for them because they are thrown away. Yeah, I just really wanted to clear what dumpster diving sort of is before we get into it, but now I really want to talk about my do's and don'ts of dumpster diving. So this is the question that I've gotten the most out of all the questions, and it is, where do you find the dumpsters? Where do you know where to go? How do you know which locations are okay? Everything related to how do I find out where to dumpster dive. What I did was that Jens and I, we went together and we took some walks around the city after closing hours. So this was for the first time we tried. I think it was pretty dark out. So we just went for a walk in the dark and we tried to locate all the grocery stores, and then we went around the back and we saw, okay, are the grocery stores putting their bins just, on the parking lot in the back, or do they have like a little shed or some fencing or anything like that? Then we sort of mapped out all the grocery stores where you could access the dumpsters simply by going around the building, not jumping over any fences, not going into any buildings or small sheds or anything like that, nothing in that sort, because a lot of grocery stores are simply just putting their bins out on the street or like in the back, but completely accessible to the public. And those were the stores and the dumpsters that we then continuously wanted to go to. So that was how I found out which dumpsters I wanted to use. And a lot of people have been asking me, how do I get started? How do I find out? I also live in Aalborg, where do I go? Sort of that kind of thing. To which I can only reply, go for a walk and go see what your options are. Preferably with someone else. Also, it's a little nicer, and I don't really like the dark all that lot, so I really wanted to go with Jens. But go for a walk, go through your neighborhood and see what kind of grocery stores do you have and how are they managing their bin situation. Is it accessible simply by walking into it, or do you have to jump a fence or something? Because if you do have to jump a fence, it's most likely super illegal. So yeah, that is how I found out which dumpsters I wanted to go to like every night and see what they had, and which dumpsters I would sort of just cross out and just not go there. You also have to be aware of the fact that it is not in every country that dumpster diving is legal. In Denmark it is legal, and I know other places it's legal as well, several countries. On the top of my head, I think in Germany it's super illegal. So don't do it if you live in Germany, but if you do live in a country where it is legal, there is usually like a distinction between a public bin, and if you simply just have a bin that is standing on a parking lot, then you can go and look at it. But if you have to cut wires, jump fences, or go into sheds, like open a door, then it is illegal to enter, because then it's trespassing and then it's illegal. So that's a really good distinction to make. That's why I went out and mapped out all the places where I didn't have to do any of those things, where I could just walk on from the street and then just have a look and then walk away. So yeah. Something that I think you shouldn't do with dumpster diving is asking the store permission. I've also seen quite a few people asking me if I'm talking to the stores, if I'm asking the stores if it's okay, and I'm not, because in Denmark we have laws in place which states that it is legal for me to go and dumpster dive, so I really don't have to ask permission from the store. If they're choosing to have their dumpsters out publicly on display, then it's really not up to them to decide if it's legal or not for me to do. And generally I wouldn't advise you asking the stores for permission, because a lot of the stores really don't like dumpster divers. And there has been some situations where I have witnessed the store coming out and saying things like, oh, it's super illegal, or you can't do this, or this is stealing. It's not stealing, and we have a paragraph in our law that says that it's not. I haven't been in those social situations myself, luckily. I don't really know how I would handle that. I usually run from confrontation like that. But yeah, I wouldn't ask the stores for permission, which brings me to my next point, which is, how do you deal with employees in general? The thing that I have learned is that I go dumpster diving after closing hours, when everyone in the store has left. I think that's super important, especially if you're kind of non-confrontational like me. Unconfrontational? Cool. And I really don't want to be dealing with employees. Many employees I have encountered, they're not that invested in the chain they're working in, like that kind of thing. So for the most part, if I end up running into employees that are working late, or maybe they're doing something like administration wise or something, sometimes you run into employees and I just smile at them and just, oh, hello, good evening. And then I just continue doing what I do. And a lot of them just, they don't care. They don't really care. But you can also end up running into a manager or someone who is really invested in hating dumpster divers. So what I try to do for the most part is that I try to go late after closing hours, like half an hour after they're closed, so you're kind of sure that they're not there. And if you see light in the store, if you see like people in there, then wait a while, then go for a walk, go do something else, and then come back. That's the thing I found to be the most useful, because then you don't have to have those confrontational conversations, and I don't like that. There's also a don't do this when it comes to dealing with employees, and this is just something I generally advise people to be polite and kind, because you do often just achieve more this way, which is very true. So if I see employees, I try to be kind and polite and say good evening and have a nice night and, you know, whatever. Because the thing is, a lot of like especially managers and stores and chains and whatnot are looking for every reason to call the police, or to lock up their dumpsters, or to do something else, or to get like green light from corporate to simply just close all the bins, or put locks on them and put them in a shed, or put them behind fences and whatnot. And the thing is, that's going to be much more likely to happen if you're rude, if you're impolite, if you're kind of entitled and being there, raising your fingers at them and being like, meh, then it's much more likely that you're going to have a really bad time and a really bad conversation with them. And it's also very likely they're going to lock up their dumpsters for everyone else in the future. So just be polite is a really good rule of thumb, generally in life, also with dumpster diving. So here's something that I think you should do when it comes to waste management, and that is being completely indifferent towards the plastic. See, the thing is, I have been talking a lot about dumpster diving, and usually I live a rather plastic-free life. I try to reduce my waste as much as possible, but in my dumpster diving videos, there are more plastic because I dumpster dive food in plastic. Lots of it comes in plastic, and it sort of seems to rub some people the wrong way because I'm a plastic-free channel and now here's tons of plastic. But see, the thing is, when you buy something in a store that's wrapped in tons of plastic, you're a green light and you're saying A-okay to the company, and you're giving them their money, and they're just going to keep doing what they do. But the food that has been thrown away, wasted and binned, you're not supporting any of the industries, any of the companies, and you're simply just taking something that would have been garbage either way. And I really prefer empty plastic over full plastic. But there's definitely also something regarding waste management that you should not ever do. Because the thing is, sometimes when you open up the dumpsters, you can see all the good stuff are just right on top and you can just pick it up. But other times you kind of need to dig a little bit through some of the not so great stuff to come to the good stuff and to find that. And what I have seen sadly being done is that the dumpster has been completely turned over and everything has been taken out, so the good stuff has been uncovered, and then it has been left that way. So the parking lot, or like the dumpster area, had just been completely littered with things that was actually thrown away but then were retrieved out of the dumpster, and now it's lying on the ground. And that's bad for many different reasons, because it can be blown into nature, into the sea, it can be taken by animals, but it is also the #1 argument against dumpster diving, and why a lot of especially chain stores and bigger companies are locking up their dumpsters, because dumpster divers are littering and they are being really wasteful, and that is just not at all the goal here. So we have to clean up after ourselves. It has to be unnoticeable that anyone was ever there, and if you're not doing that, you're not doing it right. So I just really wanted to make that clear as well. We have to clean up after ourselves, even though it's waste. That's the decent thing to do. And if I ever saw someone just pulling everything out and leaving it like that, you better be sure that I would also say something, because that's just really bad juju. Another thing that is good to do is bringing protective equipment, like for instance a mask, a glove, or some clothes that you would not mind getting dirty. Some of the dumpsters are, you know, those small bins that you open up like that, but other dumpsters are something that you can go like face first into, and where they're really big, like I don't know, 20 square meters, like they're really big. And so for that purpose, I like to wear something that I do not mind getting dirty, and something I do not mind that there is like stuff and goo and gunk on it afterwards, because that's completely fine. And yeah, wearing gloves, and especially if you're dumpster diving during this period, during a global pandemic, it's just a good idea to be sure that we are protecting ourselves and we are being the most hygienic that you can be. Another thing that is good to do, something that I also like and I have gotten some comments on as well, is how do you know if things are good? How do you pick the good food from the bad food? So what I do is that I do not spend a ton of time by the dumpster sorting out everything, and because it takes a really long time, and I really want to get in and get out really fast, and I don't want to, you know, linger around and just be there. So what I do, for instance, if I find a bag of oranges, which has happened many times, and I can see the reason why they were thrown away is because one of the oranges are completely molded up and just gone. That means the entire bag is being thrown away, which is intensely wasteful. So what I do is that I just take the entire bag and put it in my backpack, and then I sort it out at home, because that way I think I'm being more time efficient, and I get to take more stuff, I get to do everything quickly, and then I sort everything out back at home. Again, I don't really mind if stuff goes into my bin at home. It doesn't matter which bin. It just matters to me that as little goes in the bin as possible. So I just take everything out and I sort it out at home. When I get back home, I also rinse everything off really thoroughly, especially things with no skin, like spring onion and stuff like that. I really make sure to rinse it off really well. I have been to several dumpsters where laundry detergent has been sprinkled out on top. Why? Ugh. So yeah, I'm not crazy about that. I do not like that at all, but it doesn't stop me from getting the food. I will just rinse it off really well when I get home. And I also sometimes use a vinegar wash to get odors off, or simply just to make sure that it's thoroughly clean. That's a really good idea. So yes. I've also been asked what kinds of foods you find the most often. So this is just from my personal experience, and I guess it would differ a lot depending on where you dumpster dive, which country, just which city you do it in. What I tend to find a lot of always is bread. I never ever have to buy bread ever again. I've found so much bread every single time. I get home with either a loaf of like white toast, or I get home with some rye bread. Either or both, all the time. Then I find a lot of fruit, like I find tons of oranges and tons of apples, and sometimes bananas as well. So ideally, if I dumpster a couple of times a week, I have free juice for the rest of that week, which is great, but also sad. You know, I'm kind of in both camps with this, because I really like that I am able to save all this food, but I hate that it's there in the first place. Does that make sense? I also often find carrots. Same thing with the oranges, because if one of the carrots in the bag is gone bad, is moldy, then they throw out the entire thing. And at my place, I just take out the bad carrot and the rest of them are fine. So that is also a thing. What I often see in the bins as well is dairy and meat. There is so much dairy and meat. And as I said before, that I don't really mind the plastic because I'm not supporting the industry. I also know tons of people who are freegans or who dumpster dive and then eat whatever is in the dumpsters, that wouldn't buy meat or dairy, but will definitely have it if it's from a dumpster. And I totally understand that from a environmental point of view, because so many resources went into making these products and they just end up being wasted. It's so intensely awful, and animals died to end up in a garbage bin. I hate it so bad. But for me, veganism has become more than an environmental thing. I cannot imagine eating meat ever again. I really feel like I would be so uncomfortable doing it, even though I knew I wouldn't be supporting the industry. I just really don't want to, but I don't judge people who do. But there's another thing that I really don't want people to do, and some people are doing it, and I don't really want to, okay, but it's creating awareness and calling people out on wastefulness, because there are definitely two ways of going about this, where I think one way is more detrimental than the other way. Let's do it. So what I do, for instance, with my dumpster diving videos is that I try to create awareness, and I seldom talk about the stores that do it specifically. And I know other activists are being a little bit more specific and saying, this store is throwing out this and this and this, and this store is throwing out this and this and this. Could you please stop throwing things out? Which is a great way of doing it. But what I personally think is the best thing to do, if you want to create awareness and call the stores out, is calling out the chains, like the overall like chain store, and not necessarily give up any information about the location specifics. Because what will happen then, with I guess 100% certainty, is that if they know exactly where you got the things, they're not going to minimize the amount of things that they throw out. They are just going to put a lock on that dumpster, or put that dumpster somewhere where you cannot access it and where you cannot make that content anymore. That is definitely how that's going to go down. So don't give them any location specifics. Don't say that store on that street in that town, blah, blah, blah. No, just call out the entire brand instead, like the entire chain, and don't leave any location specifics. If you want to create awareness with dumpster diving, there are different ways of doing it, and I definitely think leaving out location specifics is the most effective, because that means you will keep having access to this same dumpster. In my videos, I don't have any location specifics. I don't even talk about what kind of change I am dumpster diving from. Sometimes I am a little bit, and I am also tagging sometimes the chain stores and like the bigger chains, because I do definitely think that is the most effective and also what creates the most stir. For the most part, my focus is on the consumer and how we as consumers can do anything to sort of combat this. And I know talking to the chains is also going to help oh so much. But yeah, it's also kind of like, when you've been doing this for a while, it's kind of like talking to a wall sometimes. So I like to focus on the consumers. I like to focus on you and what we can do together, because I do definitely think that's tons. You're just easier to talk to, because the companies, they don't give a shit. They don't care. They just want to make money. So Yeah, okay, that was my do's and don'ts of dumpster diving. I hope you liked this video, you found it entertaining. If this has given you some inspiration to try and dumpster dive and go about it, then please make sure that it is in fact legal in your country or region before you start doing it. That's just a good rule of thumb, to not break the law. And let me know if you're finding anything, tag me in any of your content about dumpster diving. That would be amazing. I hope to see you guys in my next video, and take really good care of yourselves. Until next time, bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!